All right. Well, Matthew, thank you.
You're welcome, Thomas. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming in. Before we get started, I'd love to do a land acknowledgement. And, interestingly, I can't even get to the land acknowledgement without telling a story.
Sure.
Last night, we went to an awards for graduating students. My two daughters are graduating.
Right.
And they were handing out scholarships and bursaries and things. And there was six high schools were represented. 6 principals were there. And all of them spoke Indigenous language.
Oh.
Like they had worked on it. And it was actually amazing. And I'm pretty sure 2 of them are Indigenous in their ancestry.
Right.
And so they spoke really, really well. But again, I was reminded as one of them shared the acknowledgement of the land, but also the ancestors that they were bringing with them. Right. And I always just find that so powerful. Anyhow.
Yes.
Let's start with acknowledging the land that we're on, and we are grateful to live and work and play on the ancestral territory of the Snuneymuxw people, the Coast Salish people, and for their thousands of years of taking care of this land and being a part of it, we say Haichka. And I know that there's a better version of that I heard last night, but I'm afraid to try to speak it because I know it'll be wrong. But Haichka works.
Haichka's good.
Haichka's good. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's give a little background here. So you've recently just started to come to Unity.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask some questions about that because as one of the leaders here at Unity Vancouver Island, I'm always curious as to why are you here?
Right. Good. That's a great question. And I grew up in the Catholic religion, and I went to church every Sunday. I was kind of forced not forced, but I was, going with my family.
I was forced.
Okay, fair enough. And when you hear the word church, you think, oh no, it kind of brings back, you have to sort of sit rigid and, follow what the priest is saying back and forth. But what I find and love so much about Unity is that I like to refer to it as an affirmation church. I love the songs, the reading, and just the energy inside. It is like a complete, you feel reborn and rejuvenated when you are there, before, when you're greeting people, while you're there, and then when you leave, even more so. Yeah.
Wow, that's really, actually, that's very refreshing to hear. Thank you, because Unity is founded on affirmative prayer.
There you go. And you can tell.
So to hear somebody new come in and say that it's an affirming church, that to me is like, okay, well, then we're probably doing our right work. Sure, it can be improved in some capacity. I'm sure some things could change. All of those things are true. But if that's the core message that you received so far, I'm good with that.
I am missing one thing, though.
What's that?
The drums.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Are they coming back?
Yes, they're coming. They're they're on hiatus right now.
Yeah.
They've asked for a break.
Okay.
No, until we get, I had some gigs to do, but until we get our sound sort of worked out, and even just a piano and a singer happening where we can get the audio, I'm not in a hurry to start playing drums and bring them back in until we get that sorted out, sort of build it, right?
Yeah. Well, so far James is a nice alternative. He's beautiful too.
Yeah. And truth be told, drumming with James is not easy. Mm-hmm. I will say he's got his own unique style, and I almost feel that he's in a lot of cases better on his own. So to just let James do James is perfect. And if my drums are here, I'd probably play on some of the songs anyway, because I can't help myself.
Yeah.
But I love actually just watching James because he's so entertaining.
He's so enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I like how he takes a song and adds his own little bit. And when we're all trying to sing with him, all of a sudden he goes off on a kind of a different key. We're trying to keep up.
Yeah.
But it's all positive and it's all good for sure. Yeah.
All right, so let's dig into some stuff. So you and I had about a 2.5-minute conversation before firing this up.
Right.
I don't really know you.
No.
You don't really know me. I mean, you've seen me speak here and such, but we don't know each other. We've never talked to each other outside of Unity, outside of a Unity Sunday.
That's right.
And so you were sharing with me that you had a medical experience some 30 something years ago.
About 32 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so maybe you could just give us a little story around that, because I think, what you wanted to talk about today a little bit was you have this idea around attitude. I'm going to, of course, try to bring attitude into spirituality to see if we can, marry the two ideas together in some capacity.
Sure.
Based on what you say, but maybe just give our listeners out there an understanding of, what your experience was and kind of bring us up to date to today.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Yeah, it's, as I was mentioning, it was about 32 years ago. I just started in real estate, and it was in June, and I had a massive headache one night, and I was living with a lady at the time. We weren't married. We had just had a daughter together, and as it turned out, it was a brain aneurysm, a near-fatal brain aneurysm. I had 12 hours of brain surgery. And then about 2 weeks later, I had to go to the Gorge Road Hospital in Victoria, where I had to do 2.5 to 3 months of rehabilitation. I had to relearn how to walk, how to talk, reasoning. I lost my sense of smell, balance. I've still got a journal that shows, like a small child writing in it at the time. I was able to retrain all of that, and I got out of the hospital in September of '93. And as I mentioned, I was living with a lady at the time, and we'd had a 1-year-old daughter. So we thought that was a close call. We got married on Valentine's Day of 1994. In September of that year, 2 weeks after my daughter's second birthday, I woke up to her coughing next to me, and she'd passed away.
This is your wife.
Yeah, my wife, right, yeah. She died next to me in bed. And
sorry to hear that, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do from there. I hadn't gone back to work, and I slowly got back to doing things, and normal everyday things, if you will. And I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I heard a speaker there, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to pass on a message of hope and love and encouragement to others. So I joined Toastmasters, and through that, I was able to develop my skills as a speaker, and I started to do. I called it an attitude talk at support groups like breast cancer or heart and stroke, people that have gone through issues or are going through problems. And to overcome that, because attitude at the end of the day is the last thing we have, really. Mm-hmm. It's all based on our attitude. And there was a quote by Charles Swindoll. I was hoping to bring that, but I forgot. If anybody ever wants to read the best quote about attitude, look up Charles Swindoll, Attitude, and it's phenomenal. Mm. And so I took that into, like I said, mentioning, talking to groups and what have you. Life went on, and, that was like 30 years ago. And the first day I came to church at the old Unity site, that other church we were at, I was so moved by the affirmation aspect of it and the way people felt and talked. And I thought, gee, this is where I need to be. And it was ironic how I got to the church. As there are other coincidences out there, or do things happen for a reason? Yes, I believe they do.
Right.
And
there are those that believe that it's just all random.
Yeah,
but we love to make meaning out of things. Yeah. And I'm a meaning making machine, so I'm good with meaning.
Good. Yeah, perfect. Because it does. And the more I look at how this all processed, and me sitting here next to you, it has so much meaning. I met a lady. She's very much involved with the church. Leanne Moores. She does. She's in A Course in Miracles, and
past president.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I met her just by chance. It was a fluke. Not a fluke. I shouldn't say that. That's the wrong wording. It was just by chance. I happened to be in a restaurant that she works at, and we exchanged names and phone numbers and got together and been together since, and I love her dearly. And we have got so many things that have happened to us through this church especially. And I think I mentioned to you before, I had my daughter, 1-year-old daughter. She ended up becoming a performer in high school. And she went out and she did an anti-bullying, anti-violence tour. She was hired by the local school district to talk to kids about bullying and being kind to each other. Ironically enough, part of the work that was done with that, the musician she worked with was Douglas Dodd was doing a lot of help in composing stuff. And Douglas Dodd was living in a house with a guy named Nico Rhodes. I don't know if anybody knows Nico Rhodes, but
That's hilarious.
And we met Nico and Doug by chance through Nico's dad, Dusty. And Haley also did some work with Brian Hazelbauer, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so lots of stuff have just tied in close. And I've seen people here at the church that I've known from other sources or other places. And the feeling is right. And it has brought back, this attitude talk I wanted to do. It feels more like a unity talk, if you will. I've picked up some old Wayne Dyer books and starting reading Wishes Fulfilled right now and talking about, how we all have that spark of God within us. And, that basically 3 words, and I am God, which, might offend others, but it's what we are. It's how it's all circular. What we do and what we are and why things happen is through faith and belief, for sure.
Yeah.
And I love listening to you talk up there and
thank you.
your enthusiasm and, everybody. It's an interesting feeling. When I mention affirmations, not only audibly affirmations, but you can feel the physical affirmation, the affirming of our inner soul, really, during the whole process. And I've never seen anybody leave church with a frown on their face or looking grumpy. Everybody's got a big smile, and must have been tough having this church during COVID because you couldn't hug anybody. And boy, there's sure lots of hugs in this group.
Yeah. Well, that's actually interesting, the whole COVID piece, because it's interesting in that I don't want to revisit the whole thing, but what you're speaking of, that attitude or that affirmation, that affirmative piece, the sense of spiritualness that I was also attracted to here at Unity, I think really showed up in spades during that crisis, in that there was never, and this goes to Reverend Patricia, our leader, there was never the idea that somehow we had to throw in the towel, or we couldn't figure out a way to get our message to continue. And sure, my wife Leslie and I were a big part of that. We immediately, my years of podcasting and using Zoom and all of that stuff, that my musicianship, all of those things that I had done in my past life around audio and video, was when it enabled us to immediately, we never missed a week. Like we went from having a Sunday service to the next week being online.
Well, something meant to be again, right?
Right. Like, yeah. and yet we had talked about being online in the boardroom for a while, and nothing happened. And then once it was required, everything just lined up, and people showed up that needed to show up. The musicians, Nico was willing to still come in and play, and Ken and Sharon were willing to sing. Like, all of those things happened as a result of people just affirming that we don't actually have to give into that.
Right.
We can figure out a way through it.
Exactly. Well, and as far as that, and with COVID and that, brought out so many different things in people. But I think the real vein of what came out for people that I've noticed, or I try to live by, is kindness and working together. And that's what you guys all did. You worked together, didn't you? We got to just change the way we're doing things, but we can still get it done. Maybe even adapt and be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Well, and there were certainly those that had, ideas of how it should look, and some judgments around things that we may have done or not done. And that's fine. Like, I think part of attitude, if we're going to talk about that, I think part of attitude, at least for me, is understanding also that people need to be who they are. That I don't need to control that. Like, man, I have enough challenge getting this thing in the right space and frame, right?
No doubt.
To manage a day. Never mind trying to do that for other people, right? Yeah. So I think with all of that, with what we're talking about, a lot of there's some grace that needs to go with that, and to understand that, hey, people need to be who they are.
They do, and that's where attitude starts, doesn't it? I mean, it can't be forced upon you. It can't come from somebody else. There can be encouragement, and there can be some guidance and some help that way. But at the end of the day, it all It's all about you. And that's what it says in that quote I was mentioning. You know what? Whatever else has happened, you have that one string to play on, and that's your attitude. No matter what's going on around you. And then COVID's a good example. I mean, people reacted so differently in all spectrums, and that's the way life is, isn't it? Like you said, you guys could have folded and maybe waited it out, but no, you decide let's adapt and change, and it starts with that attitude, and right here in the soul, that little spark of God that we all have in us.
Yeah. And it allowed us to evolve into having, the communities of Victoria and Comox Valley join us, and we all came together, and that all happened during that time frame. And because we were online, we had the ability to now reach, like a whole lot of things sort of came together. And they're not without their challenges. Like right. we do not do this perfectly.
No.
Let's be clear. Yeah. We struggle to get what we get out in any kind of format. And there, I could go through every Sunday and go, well, that could be better, and that could be better, and that could have been better, right? Yeah. But you do what you can. I kind of want to go back to something,
sure.
and I might be asking you to sort of relive some things, but I'm fascinated by your story, having just heard it. Of what is that, like, one of the things as a minister that I'm very aware of is grief work, is people overcoming grief. And it's not just the loss of a loved one. Truly, that is also grief work. But even your experience of having a brain aneurysm, losing your ability to manage yourself in some capacity and having to come back from that. How does that, if you can remember, like, what was your process to get through that? Like, how did you, I'm assuming, well, I know you didn't know of Unity back then.
No.
So, the idea of affirmative prayer was not something you were probably had in your awareness. So how did you manage yourself through that? What, were there trials and tribulations? Were there some dark days through that journey?
Definitely. Yeah. For a couple of different things that I did. And I went through, I haven't had issues, but I did have some sort of, what's the word? Not relapses or times where I felt overwhelmed, and I had to sit and just sort of relax and sort of do some quiet meditation because my head would start to hurt and what have you, but that's gone away considerably. And as far as maybe I don't know if the spirituality side of it is, but the rebuilding inside here, I really delved into reaching out to the masters of quote unquote motivation. People like Jack Canfield, Bob Proctor. Ironically enough, though, what I found, I didn't really delve back into, say, the Bible or spirituality very much. And that's where it's full circle now. I am full in. And that's what I find the difference too between Unity and, say, the Catholic Church and what have you. That was church, and that was religion, where this I find is spirituality, and it's more fulfilling. And so what I did daily is I tried to find motivational quotes and just inspirational affirmations to write down. I do a practice daily where I write down at least 2 gratitudes, and I'll have a gratitude as simple as I look outside and I'm grateful for the sunny day. I'm grateful for the smell of flowers. I'm grateful for the view I have from where I live. Things like that.
Well, it doesn't need to be complicated.
No,
right?
It doesn't.
Like, it can be really simple.
Yeah.
Gratitude can be like, hey man, I'm happy I have my 5 fingers on this hand today. Like seriously. Exactly.
Well, and that's a good tie-in too. I had a brother, he's passed away, but my oldest brother I grew up with had cerebral palsy. And this was he was born in the 50s, and he was put in a wheelchair, and he couldn't speak. He drooled, he wore diapers, he had no skills to move around, at all. And I used to see inspiration in him, and I look back quite often when I had the aneurysm at what he was doing. He sat there, he couldn't speak. He communicated through his eyes and his facial emotions, but things were going on in his brain, and he did the best with what he could. And that's what I did. Okay, you do the best with what you can, and I find that by helping others, which I did get involved in, I'm a Rotarian now, and I've done a lot of different things in the community. By helping others, also healed me. Yeah, and it's I received an award several years ago called the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board Care Award. It's for realtors that go out in the community and give something special back or try to do things to help others. And that was very gratifying. But, I don't do it for the award or I do it for the reward of helping others and kindness. Kindness is so key in our day, in this day and age. There's so much strange stuff in the world that's going on. I mentioned being a Rotarian, and we have a test called the 4-way test as a Rotarian. And one of the 4 items is it beneficial to all concerned? Well, the actual 4-way test is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? Ironically enough, that kind of sounds like the Unity Church.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I got involved heavily in the community. I did a few other things to sort of challenge myself. I walked on fire. I skydived.
Okay.
Yeah, I did some whitewater rafting.
I've done the skydiving. I haven't walked on fire yet.
Yeah, it's the walking on fire was a little easier.
Yeah, jumping out of a perfectly healthy plane.
Yeah,
A little questionable.
So if you want to challenge yourself, jump out of an airplane and skydive, but land on a bed of coals and then run across them at the end. So, get back to your question. It was just more of a process. And I found that, when my wife died, her name was Sandra. When she died, I spent a lot of time, saying, well, this is what Sandra would want. This is what I should do. But one day I kind of said to myself, wait a minute, she's passed on. She's no longer a physical body in this world. You have to do what's right for you and to make decisions based on that. And so you can move forward. And you mentioned grief, and I remember one of the strangest grief experiences I had during that process or that time was I took my daughter to see The Lion King. Now, I'd gone to see The Lion King with Sandra before she passed away, obviously. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the theater with my daughter, 2-year-old daughter, watching The Lion King, and all of a sudden started bawling. People are looking at me, what's this guy crying for?
Yeah.
But it all came back right then and there.
Up.
Yeah. But without releasing that and letting her spirit go and somewhere else and taking care of myself, I don't know how long it would have taken to get through the grieving process. I remember a passage that was given to me. I did a little bit of got some counseling. It's called The Elephant in the Room, and it basically talks about wherever you went, there was always that, how does this person feel? Should we ask them about how are you feeling, or the whole, and it should be talked about,
right?
And that's that's how I got through it that way, pretty much. Yeah.
That's actually a really couple things. One is the elephant in the room. So, you know my wife Leslie. When I met her, her father had already passed away, and one of the things that I noticed, which I hadn't really seen before, was how much they celebrated him.
Oh, neat. That's the way it should be.
They shared him with me. Okay. Like it wasn't, we don't talk about Howard.
Right.
It was they wanted me to know who he was, and whether he'd approve of me or not. Right?
Yeah.
This was his daughter.
Right.
So there's there's been jokes around that.
I'm sure he would have,
because I was a rock musician back then. He might not have been excited about me so much at that time in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that openness and that willingness to share with me was actually a gift to me, and I don't know whether they know how much of a gift that was to me, to do that, to be that way around it. So I think your idea of sharing that is like super important, right?
Well, and when you mentioned your father-in-law, something I'd like to pass out to everybody out there, pass on, is that this something we should try to do. Not find out about people after they pass away, but take the time to get to know them while they're alive. Quite often I'll read an obituary about somebody I knew, I was friends with, but I didn't know that much about them. And you find out they did this and they like doing that, and it wouldn't have been nice to have, sat down and said, hey, Thomas, what do you really like? What do you like to get in? What gets you going? Yeah. Instead of finding out after you've gone away, Thomas liked doing that, or he was a rock music, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Get to know people that you care about while they're alive.
Yeah. That's a really great point, because I'm always is not the right word. There's many times where I am surprised at the depth of the humanity I meet at Unity, because I don't know everybody really well.
Right.
I know everybody by face. I know a lot of them by name. I'm I'm not great with names, so it's a struggle for me sometimes to recall names.
I can relate. Yeah,
I know everybody by face, and then outside of that, I don't know anything about some of the people here.
Yeah.
And I've seen them for years now.
Right.
Like some of them, it's been years, and I really don't know. And that's on me, right? They know lots about me because I'm up there blabbering away all the time. Yeah. And so that's a really good point you bring up.
You know what? Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That's just an idea. I should probably talk to you about this. Not during the interview.
No,
but
put me over the coals, buddy.
Okay. You know what would be a cool thing to do with Unity? We do this thing in Rotary called a classification talk, where each Rotarian has it's a short little time to stand up and say, this is who I am, this is why I am, and this is where I am, kind of stuff, and what I've done and where I came from. And everybody gets to know. And during those talks, it's so enlightening. Oh, really? You did that? Like you mentioned, you were a rock musician. You know, who would have known, right? Mm-hmm. Did you have long hair?
Oh, yeah.
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 But, you know,
it wasn't just long, buddy. I had curls.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah. I had ringlets of long hair that,
Did you do the hairspray with the big...
No,
good.
That was too far.
That's
the
80s.
Hairspray was too far. Oh, yeah. I was 80s, but I was never going to do the hair product. No.
Yeah. So that, you know, getting to know people, like you say, you see people... You know, and we all look up at you as an inspiration for sure. You know, I'm speaking for myself, but I know that Leanne does and so many others. I mean, that, you know, you give a great, you want to call it a sermon, but it's always inspirational. It always has good content. There's always some humor thrown in there, and it's so enjoyable. And everybody comes out of that feeling better. And like you said, you may not know everybody in the quote unquote congregation, but you know them by face, but might be nice to know a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it is, because like I'm always surprised by people. That's the thing, is I'm always surprised. And then there's the people that have been coming to Unity for 35 years who know way more. You know, when I sat down with Brenda, for example, as our board chair, and found out that it's like her mom that kind of started Unity here on the island. Like to know that history. There's value there, right? There's, at least for me, there's some people who wouldn't care about that stuff, but for me, there is a value in knowing where the roots of something come from, and the journey that it's been through, and the trials and the tribulations and the struggles and the victories. Like all of those things I think are good, and to know that in a human, to know what you've experienced now. Like I will see you differently than I did before, knowing what I now know about you. It's like, oh wow, I didn't know. Okay, that's like something I've never had to deal with. Yeah. Like, holy smokes. Yeah,
it was one thing that pops in my head as far as the changing part of it was, I don't want to be morbid and all that, but I think I was tried to give her mouth to mouth, but felt like it was a dead body or a hollow shell. There was no response. It was the strangest feeling. It's still, I can feel that. I get sort of chills. And, I don't think, everybody should experience that, but having something, death is a funny thing. Because as we know, death isn't that's the end of the physical body, and the spirit goes on. But when that physical body is gone, I mentioned my brother Jeff. His name was Jeff. That had the cerebral palsy, and Leanne and I were just talking about this recently. That when he died, he was down in the States, and I was up here, and I found out by phone. That was, I think, the last time I had uncontrollable sobbing, crying. The body just let loose and going, and it was wow, what a strange feeling to have no control and to have everything just. It was almost like a cleanse, bringing back memories and what have you. Maybe guilt, maybe happiness, a little bit of everything. Yeah. Well,
you just reminded me. There was two things I had earlier from something you said, and one of them was the Jack Canfield, the Bob Proctor, all of those. Mary Morrissey's another one.
Yes.
What I love about listening to them, I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me. But what I love about listening to them, Jim Rohn, is they're talking about prosperity in a lot of cases, and how to win in our life, how to have more of our life. And in a lot of cases, it looks like external possessions, right? But really, like for me, at the core of it all is the faith and the trust and the love in yourself, matched with vibration from feeling. Like you're talking about the sobbing moment. I was actually sharing with somebody this morning that, 7 years after my father passed, I was walking up on a trail here around Westwood Lake with the dog, and a song came on that I'd heard many times before.
Right.
Never had equated it with my father, but there's a lyric in there that goes, "And I miss you," right? And it overwhelmed me to the point where I I literally fell to the ground.
Wow.
A sobbing action, like you said, where everything's just coming out of everything in your ears, your nose, your eyes, your mouth, you're drooling of tears of missing my dad at a level I had never experienced.
Wow.
From the time he passed and it was 7 years after the fact that it finally, the emotion finally let out.
Wow.
And after that, I felt so good. Like just relief from letting that go.
Yeah, you can feel something lift out of your body kind of thing.
Yeah. It was like, and every time I hear that song, I get a little tear in my eye.
Sure.
And I love that song.
Yeah.
Like I now love that song. One of my favorite songs ever.
Yes.
Because of that experience, that connection, that allowing myself to truly feel something. And when I think about, even the ministerial path, my desire to play music, my desire to build my own business, all of those had emotion in them, that spiritual connection within. They weren't just ideas, oh, I think I'd like to do this. I was fully 100% invested in it. And I think that's what they're talking about. And that's a spiritualness. That's not just, hey, I want to do something that you're just conjuring up here in your conscious mind. You need to bring it and own it and have it be you.
Yes, and come out naturally. It's funny you should say that. This morning I was reading in the Wishes Fulfilled, Wayne Dyer, and he's talking about when he was writing, quite often he'd sit down at the desk and the words were just flowing out of him. He wasn't thinking. It was almost like when he was using the pen was moving on its own, and it was coming through the spirit, like you do when you do your sermons and that. It just comes out naturally. You don't have to rehearse it. It just starts coming and flowing because of that spirit inside.
Yeah.
And we're talking about death there and missing people. I heard a quote once that we'll go through a day and you go, it's just a day, no big deal. I'll just I'll catch up tomorrow. But we should never dismiss a day. Can you imagine, though, geez, if I just had that one more day with my dad, or if I had that one more day with that person, or just, every moment, every minute counts. And when I came out of the hospital in the summer of that 1993, I heard
from the aneurysm.
From the aneurysm.
Yeah.
I heard a quote, and I try to live by, and I'm sure a lot of people have already heard it, but the past is history, the future is a mystery, but today is a gift, and that's why it's called the present.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so true, every minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's kind of part two, too, is like how did that near-death experience change you?
Well,
or do you remember?
I do remember something just popped back into my head about after 2 weeks of the recovery in the hospital. I had a lot of complications after the surgery, and I was in recovery for 2 weeks, and then I went to the Gorge Road Hospital, and I still have this in my memory of walking outside. It would have been in July, walking outside of the hospital. My first memory of being outside, and it was a day like today. It was sunny, it was beautiful, and I stood there and I looked up and I noticed, I think for the first time really right in here, the blueness of the sky, the greenness of the trees, the smell of the flowers, the sound of the birds, nature, everything that's around us all day long, and just kind of going, wow, this is amazing. This is life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just that feeling of gratitude. It's funny. I remember, 6 months later, back in the mainstream of life or whatever, and same kind of day, but I've got my head down. I'm grumbling about my problems and all that. Whoa, go back to the gratitude.
Yeah. Well, it's, it's super easy.
Yeah.
It's super easy to fall into the humanness, right, of the doing.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know where. I think I was actually on Fitbit, my little cheapo Fitbit here.
Yeah, I have one.
I was on the app this morning, and there was a meditation offered on there, which I don't. I use Insight Timer, and I have my own time and stuff that I do things. But anyhow, I was looking through them, and one of them was something we are human being, not human doing.
Right.
And so I was intrigued enough to listen to it.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty basic, generic sort of meditation, but that idea has stuck with me all day today.
Sure.
The human being, not the human doing.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get caught up in the doing of life.
Yeah.
And yes, things need to get done. Yes, we have goals and aspirations, and we have things that need to get managed. And if we're having a challenge in our life, certainly we need to reflect and manage it. And at the same time, our beingness in all of it is critical.
It is, isn't it? Because that's that spirit again, right?
Yes.
The being in spirit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact quote, but something about we're human beings having a physical experience or something that, not a...
We're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it keeps going on. And that's what I like about Unity is I find that spirituality part of it, as I mentioned before, but that, one thing that's kind of, this is my sort of thing. My middle name is Aura.
Okay.
Which is spelled different than the aura around you, but I always kind of play on that a little bit. So. And, but that's what I find. You can feel the positive aura at the Unity Church on Sundays, and and that's like you say, those are beings having that spiritual experience. They're not doing a spiritual experience.
No. We are steeped rich in congregants that have been living these principles of unity for a long time. That's what it is. That's where we started. That's what attracted you.
Yeah.
But that's what attracted me. That's what had me decide, I think I want to be a minister, not far off from your desire to want to take Toastmasters and be a public speaker to share a message of attitude.
Yeah.
Right. It's not different. Like my inclination to do ministry was that I think I have within me something to offer that is really serving me well. And wouldn't it be great to share that? Like that's as simple as it is, right? There's no other.
Yeah.
I didn't get into ministry to be wealthy, on a financial level, but to be wealthy overall.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. To bring wealth to myself in every facet.
Yeah.
That was the journey of really digging into unity principles, because Charles Fillmore was, he was talking about the very thing that Mary Morrissey and the Bob Proctors of the world are talking about. He was writing about that stuff in the early 1900s.
Wow.
He's got a book, the Atom Smashing Power, about quantum physics in the 20s, before the quantum field and quantum physics is where it is today. He was already sort of digesting that in a way and trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Right. This way of beingness. And, I love one of his quotes was he sort of, and I'm going to butcher it a little, was he said he reserved the right to change his mind about things. I'm not stuck here. I'm open to what is next. What is Spirit serving up next?
Yeah, and that's the thing. What is next? And I think with faith, you just let it be, right? Like Paul McCartney and the Beatles said, "Let it be."
Yeah.
And and the two words "I am" are so important, I think, in spirituality. And the I am discourses are an interesting read. It's kind of like the Course in Miracles. It's not something you can read and go through once. And I think that's what growth is all about, because we're ever changing, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, I would say a lot of books are that way. I've read, I don't know whether I've read the same books more than I've read new books overall, because I've reread many books that I've read along the way. And then there's just the pieces of books that I have bookmarked as things to revisit.
Yes.
Right. And then every time it's like something new actually shows up from it, a new thought, or wow, I never thought of it in that perspective. Because where I was before, the place I was at a year ago, I've now grown, and suddenly that has a different ring to it, or a different meaning to it.
Sure, it does. Yeah, it's ever changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always evolving to something different, and growth is good if you allow it to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just getting back to your
Sure.
attitude.
Yeah.
So what did you, when you did your talks on attitude, did you have like a step process that somebody could do, or was it more just a overview philosophically of how you can have what your attitude is matters?
I did have something that, let's see if my memory serves me right. I haven't done it for such a long time, but I kind of did what I tried to do is, you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do, you don't open up any emails, you do gratitude. You look around and you be grateful for the first thing you're grateful for is I woke up today, and as you get up and walk to where you're going to have a coffee or whatever. And I think before you do anything else, you do the gratitudes, pick up something to read. And it's not the newspaper or anything like that. It's not Facebook. It's a book that talks about, growth, whatever resonates with you. That and you can be the same thing every day, really. But and then through that, then you do your affirmations and have reminders with you all the time. Little pieces of paper, or have it on your phone. Little affirmations or reminders, and if you feel like you're getting down, say, hey, wait a minute. How am I feeling? Is this the right, true feeling thought? No, it's not. So be cognizant of how you're feeling. Have reminders. Put sticky notes around that. Hey, I'm okay. I'm a good person. Sure, I'm going to make mistakes, but who doesn't? And I'm not gonna be a victim. I'm going to be a player, so to speak. And just a constant reminder, because someone said that motivation is like hygiene. You brush your teeth every day. Motivation has to happen every day too. And you don't just doesn't come to you, but the more you do it, the more natural it is. And then you are what you say, the being. You're a positive being, and that's kind of what I would tell them. It's a process. It's a daily thing. It's not something that you do a couple times and then quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's huge advice. I mean, if for those people here at Unity that know me, I've been, prayer and meditation practice every day.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no holidays to that. That is an everyday experience and practice. If you want to create an energy in your life that is peaceful, calming, loving, appreciative, it all begins here.
Yes.
And so one of the things you can do to set that up is to tune yourself into it every single day.
Yeah, make it your life. That's what's just how I'm living my life. You mentioned your Fitbit. Well, I have found and discovered that with the Fitbit, I can do bedtime meditations. And I just put some earbuds in, put on the sleep meditation and just calm and breathe. And breathing is a big thing. Taking the time to breathe and
breathing is a big thing.
Yeah.
let's be clear.
We wouldn't be.
It's a huge part of it.
Yeah. And I like that. Our meditations here. It's funny when you have us start. I'll do our meditations. All of a sudden you hear in the room. Everybody doing that. Yeah. It's nice.
Well, it's the breath of life, right? I actually was in a meditation this morning and it hit me. I was leading a meditation, but sometimes it's funny to me how you can get me, not you. I'll say me. I can get trapped in just the verbiage of stuff. Like it becomes repetitive. Like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. And then there's times though where I say something and it actually hits me again. Right. Like it's like, oh wow, wait a second. And then in those moments I actually notice I haven't been tuned into that. Right. And suddenly that's a nice gentle reminder. And this morning was actually around the breath. Okay. And just what came to me was that, I had a flash before my eyes of remembering my daughters being born. Right. And their breath, their first, like they had never done that until that moment. Yes. Yeah. And it really hit me this morning of like, oh my gosh, what a gift.
And that came through your spirit, this little baby that,
but just that, like they came out and went,
yeah.
And suddenly they were here in this place, this dimension, this space where we breathe oxygen. Yeah. Right. Like they were out of, that other environment that they were in, they were now in this one. And it I don't know, it just really hit me this morning of the gift.
On that, the gift, exactly. And on that same tone, when we breathe, is the breath, doing us, or are we doing the breathing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just a natural thing that happens, and we don't think about it. And I think that's why spirituality and unity, is not something that you seek it, but you live it.
Yeah.
And it lives you.
Yeah. It was actually Don Gyverson. Don, a little shout out to you if you're watching this, that in one of your meditations, he's a Unity congregant, and in one of his meditations, and he says this a lot, was being breathed.
Being breathed,
right?
yeah.
And I think he's the first one I heard say that. I'm sure it's been said elsewhere, but I think it was him the first time I had ever heard that phrase of just being breathed. And it was like, and I really got it. It was like, oh yeah, because there's so much of the day I'm not even thinking about it.
No,
it's just happening.
Yeah,
right?
and that's the process of life, isn't it? That we take for granted that this all is happening. How?
Yeah.
Our blood's flowing through us, the heart's beating, and we're breathing, and we don't do effort to do it. It just does us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have another question for you, and I don't, we didn't talk about anything beforehand. So if I'm offside, let me know.
Sure.
So I'm curious what your relationship is like with your daughter, having had to experience that and suddenly be a lone parent at her age of 2, and her dealing with that at some point down the road, the loss of her mom. Can you share what that experience has been like for you as a father? Because I know what my experience is like as a father, but that would be different.
I won't elaborate too much on it, but I'm glad you asked that question, because my daughter and I have, we're re-healing right now, to be perfect. She lives in Edmonton, and I did remarry, and things didn't go well that way with her and her stepmom. And my daughter and I's relationship has always been close. And I have a son, too, from a different relationship. Fabulous boy. My daughter's name is Haley. Mm-hmm. My son's name is Devin. But she went through some trial and tribulations because she never really knew her birth mom. And there were some things that threw her off. And it was a tough thing to deal with. And I don't know. We just, I think, let love take over, because there wasn't a lot of other things that we did to go through it all. It was a tough go for sure. Mm-hmm. And we are working on still healing that whole process. It's 30 some odd years later, and I think it's more relevant now what had happened then than it was back then, because she was so young. Mm-hmm. And I've just tried to reassure her that, she lost your birth mom, but you have me, and I love you, and I will always be there for you. And everybody's going to make mistakes. I did a lot of them for a long time. And just remember, though, that you are loved, and that you always have someone to come back on, and just be true to yourself. And together, if we can't hug each other because we're far apart, but we can do a virtual hug and send messages back and forth, mm-hmm. and send love. Just all about love and caring and kindness. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah
And what I really hear there is that we can hold that space. If I were to gather Unity teachings around this, it would be, we can hold that space of love and connection through prayer, through affirmative prayer, whether the person is right in front of us or mm-hmm. not. We can still send that energy, that frequency, that vibration, and hold them in that space of love and appreciation and healing.
Yes.
And I really hope that continues to unfold in light and love for you and Haley. That continues to blossom.
It will.
Yeah.
I have all the faith in that for sure. That's gonna happen. We're in tune again, and again, it's that vibrational energy that you can pass from here to across the globe.
Well, funnily enough, when you arrived,
yes,
you were sitting in the parking lot in your car.
Yeah.
And for those that know, there's the side door here at Unity, or at Brecon United, the church, the building. And if you go out that side door, it locks behind you, and then you got to go all the way around to get back in. So I didn't want to walk out to the parking lot.
Right. So
I stood at the door.
Yeah, that was crazy. I'm looking down on my car, checking my phone or whatever, since someone wants me. Look up.
So this was my thought process. I haven't shared this with you. I stood there and I thought, okay, well, I could try to jimmy the door and then walk out and get him, or I could see if I could actually call him with just my mind. So
it worked.
So that was my thought. And then I thought, I'm going to have to be really intentional and crystal clear about this to do it.
Yeah.
So I actually used my hand, and I was pointing. You were down doing whatever you were doing for sure, and I pointed my hand, and I'm like, Matthew, look over here.
And
you didn't. No, you didn't. And I was like, Matthew, look over here. You need to look over here. And then you popped your head. You popped up and looked right at me. And then you were like, wait a second, that was really weird. I felt like I was called to look over here. And it's like, you were.
Well, and what was ironic is when I was checking my phone, I was checking our old emails. Like, Thomas the Shooter, okay, am I here at the right time? And all of a sudden, oh, yeah, I am. That was good. Yeah, good old vibrational energy. Oh, and that's something that I have found. I mentioned Leanne, and the vibrational energy between me and her, and it travels through the people that I've met here with Unity, but it works, and it's amazing if you allow it to happen.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
That's my story.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sure. I'm sure I would love to hear more, and we'll connect.
Yeah.
More now than we have before.
I think so. I know so. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate your openness and your willingness to share your story with me. We don't know each other, or we didn't know each other that well coming in.
Yeah.
I know a lot more about you now, and I'm grateful for your presence and your willingness to tell your view on spirituality that comes from a place of attitude. But I think they're all the same.
They are.
It's all bottled up in the same stuff, and people get hung up on this idea of, do I believe in God or do I not believe in God? And I don't think that matters. I think the human spirit, the connection to the humanness of our spiritualness, of our vibration, our energy, is what is God to me.
I agree, 100%.
And so when you see that in somebody else, whether they're using that language or not, doesn't matter. That's who they are. And it's beautiful. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Thomas.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
We can just keep saying goodbye.
Yeah, we could.